All right, guys, so I am down in Matagorda. I'm guiding all week. I don't have time to get in the studio. When I have customers with me, I don't have time to run cameras. I prefer to give my energy to them. So we just got done recording a Bite Me episode. If you do not know about the Bite Me podcast, go on your phone, open your podcast app, iTunes, whatever it is. It's Bite Me, a Texas saltwater fishing podcast. It features the OG John Lopez, the OG of sports radio. This dude covered Sosa McGuire. He told me earlier that Michael Jordan really wasn't that good.
I don't know about that.
And then I've got the OG of red fishing right here. Kayaks, big boats out in the surf, fishing tarpon, poling skiffs in the back. He fishes fly fishing, conventional. He's a guide in Port O'Connor. Frankly, he's been my mentor for about as long as I can remember now, because he's been around a long time. So I want to do something quick, put something out there. The current conditions right now, we've got high tides. As the southeast winds keep coming all summer, we're going to have the summer high tides. I want Scott to kind of take point here. This is Scott Null. I don't think I said that. He just OG of red fishing, call him that.
Yeah.
But I want Scott to kind of take point here on how he approaches the high tide, whether he wants to, push back to try to find some redfish, whether he wants to come out deeper to try to find some redfish, and maybe I'll interject some stuff in there. John can help us out. But Scott, so it's the Wednesday morning. The tide's up, 8-10 inches. It's coming in. The water isn't drained out. They're not all concentrated in an area. What's the first move that you would make whenever you're trying to go find that redfish for yourself or your customers?
So you're basically talking about what happened all last year.
Yeah.
All last spring, summer. It was high.
We've had a lot of practice.
It was a whole lot of high. And the problem down there where I'm at is I've got a lot of mangroves, the little short black mangroves. Got them all over the place. And there's this line of mangroves they're in the water. It's a little bit of water underneath them on a normal tide. And then behind that, there's this little clear strip of sand, back behind there before the salt grass starts up. And water was so high that there was enough water on that white sand behind the mangroves to hold fish. And so I had to find little cuts and crevices to pull the boat through the mangroves in order to get onto that white sand. Once I was back there, it was easy. There was a lot of fish back there. The days when I couldn't get in there, or the water was, just up in the mangroves, I could hear them feeding in there. They're blasting, they're blowing up. It was frustrating. I had 40, 50 yards back into the trees, and you can hear them. My buddy Dean down there at Aransas calls it monkey fishing. And you just got to get in there with them if you can. If you can find some little openings in there. But I like to push as far back in as I can go. Get shallow. That's my whole game. With the fly fishing stuff, is being able to see the fish and watch what they're doing, see how they're reacting to flies, and see how they're reacting to bait, how they're moving down the shoreline. Are they in groups? Are they singles? I want to be able to see that, and I want to see how they react to a lure, whether they flee when it hits too close to them, or whether they get curious. Redfish got all kind of moods, and if you figure out what the mood is, then it sure helps you in the long run catching the fish. But the high tides are a pain, man. I mean, I don't like them. Let's be honest, I don't like them. I like a low tide. I like it when that wind blows that water out of there in the fall, and we get it in the summer too. Normal summer. Last year it never really seemed to happen, but generally around August, around the solstice, that's generally the lowest time of the tides. The moon has the biggest effect on the tides at that point, and so it'll suck all that water out, and that's when I get going.
So we're the same way. The people I fish with, we love the low tide. Taylor and I fished a tournament. Well, I say to the tournament, it was like a 12-person grudge match because most of the tournaments are shut down. But the tides were super high. We could hear the redfish just back in cow pasture smashing stuff. If y'all follow me on Facebook, you saw me post a great big trout. I caught that thing way in the back where there shouldn't be a trout. It was all redfish. But so Scott has the boat, he has the gear to really climb back in there and find those fish that have pulled way back. Now, if you don't have that boat, if you don't have that gear, one of my favorite things to do is I pull out to the intercoastal. Because when the tides come way up, then the edges of the intercoastal start flooding. And yeah, Dos Equis, love it. The tide, they start flooding, and what happens is all the little crab holes and the rocks that the Army Corps of Engineers have put out, that gets water over it. Well, then the redfish are cruising the edges of those flats, and they're sucking on those crabs and shrimp and bait fish and all that kind of whatnot that's in those rocks. So the misconception that I've heard a lot is when the tide's way out, people, you know, they go to the intercoastal because it sucked all the fish out. And while that can certainly be true, that kind of counts, you know, around the mouths of back lakes. That's not really going to give you your whole intercoastal stretch. So whenever those tides are high, the edge of the intercoastal is going to be a good place. You know, it puts some water there. You can throw a popping cork in a gulp, whatever you want to do. Now, we've talked red fishing. Let's move on to trout fishing, and I'm gonna ask the OG here, John. Whenever the tides are up high, you're trying to go catch a trout. What's your thing, man?
There's a couple of things. I love to catch a redfish, but I usually catch them by accident because I like to target trout. The one thing, it ties in directly with what you're talking about. I was thinking about this when you were talking. I like shell reefs, you know, that you fish the same bait system. I like to fish East Matagorda. There's a lot of nice shell reefs out there. There's the oyster reefs, you know, whatever it may be. I know where those reefs are. So when the tide is really up, I know where the best shallow areas are on those reefs that have been exposed for a long period of time. And so let's talk about the chain, right? The ecosystem chain, from the smallest animals, you know, the bigger ones get them, the bigger ones get them. Wherever those exposed oyster reefs are, or shell reefs or whatever, I go as shallow as I can on there because I should know it by now. And it's been churning up the bird poop and little small microorganisms and all that, and then that grows into bait fish and that grows into trout, which is, like I said, what I like to target. So I like when it's a high tide, I'm like you guys, obviously low tide is good, but when it's a high tide, if you know the shellfish and the oyster reef areas, go to where you know that you can get in without, you know, damaging your boat or your feet or whatever, and just hit those areas because the ecosystem is just churning, man.
So you took the words right out of my mouth. It you know, like you said, that there's stuff in there that's been shallow. The water comes up, you know, the little stuff gets in there. The bait starts coming and getting that. The big fish come to the bait. We like the low tide. We like them concentrated. The tide gets big. The fish can just scatter out all over the place. So now you are more keying on something that is going to give that fish a reason to be there versus that fish having to be there. Another thing that I do is the areas that are just shallow all the time, and I see it whenever I'm driving around, and it's just teeming with mullet and whatnot. But it's little low warm water. Whenever that tide comes in, that's giving those fish a fresh place to go get after a new hatch of bait, or a new batch of bait, should I say, and that, you know, it can really produce for you. So the high tide's not the most fun thing in the world to fish. But you heard it from Scott Null himself. The man needs no introduction. You heard it from the OG, John Lopez. I gave you a little bit of what I think about it. I know there's no crazy editing, no, you know, big music, no studios this week. But I promise you, this video right here is going to be, you know, the years of experience that you're getting is more than I can give you by myself. Now, we're almost about to cross 1,000 viewers. I am going to do a big deal. I've got one viewer in mind already, and I'm going to give the young man a hint. He was my first subscriber ever. I have something for him in mind already. If you're not subscribed and commenting, you are missing out. Because I've got a list of everybody that's commented on all the stuff. I'm gonna do a drawing. I'm not gonna send you a free bag of baits. This is gonna be a real deal, and I'm gonna leave it at that. So, anyways, hey, John Lopez, thank you for being here.
Thank you, man.
My mentor, Scott Null, and we'll see you on the next one.